Chapter 5 of the Life and Adventures of the Original John Jacob Astor. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. The Life and Adventures of the Original John Jacob Astor by Elizabeth Louisa Gebhard. Chapter 5 John Helfrich's Journal. The type of information that came back to the waiting youths in the Old World who longed to make the great venture and cross the seas is to be found in John Helfrich's journal. The three young ministers set sail from Amsterdam on September 6, 1771, at 9 o'clock in the morning, as Helfrich accurately states. At 12 the same day they struck fast on the bar and needed a ship of lighter tonnage to tow them off. The second day they ran into so severe a storm that all the fires were put out, and the captain's baby was fed upon soup cooked over a lighted tallow candle. Their initial troubles were not over yet, for they collided with a ship which struck them once real hard before they had left the dangerous Zuyder Zee. A touch of humor ensues as the young Dumines sets down, September 16, arrived at the harbor of Newcastle. September 17th, we went on shore with the Chalates. Here we were constantly followed by a crowd of people. They kissed the baby, we were expected to kiss theirs. Almost every other entry tells of wind and storm, violent rocking of the ship, no sleep, and a second collision. On Sunday, the 6th of October, in company with a large number of ships, they sailed with the tide out of the harbor in the North Sea. So terrible was the storm, young Helfrich states, that the sailors were furled, the topmasts were taken down, and the helm was lashed, and the ship was given over to the mercy of the wind and waves. The waves came rolling mountain high. Soon we were in the heights, soon in the depths, soon on one side, soon on the other, the waves beating into the cabin. Many chickens and ducks were lost, and the passengers felt it was fortunate that their ship was a strong one. It was terrible to hear the roaring of the wind and the waves. When the waves struck the vessel, they sounded like the thunder and the roar of cannons, and we committed ourselves altogether to the divine providence. The distance they should have covered in 3 days had taken 14. But at last, on the morning of October 21st, they sighted France and England, and entered the English Channel without further mishap. Here they discovered that more than 100 ships had been wrecked during the recent storms. For a time, there were quieter days. Then on November 9th, once more they were in the teeth of a gale, the passengers in the haste and danger helping to furl the sails. Twice they were struck by whirlwinds, breaking the cabin windows, drenching Mr. Gebhard, and causing his companions to take themselves quickly to the tops of chests and trunks. Their fears were increased by the captain's orders to load their guns. The only guns available at the moment were 2 double-barrel and a single-barrel, the possessions of Mr. Dahl, a cousin of Mr. Helfrich. The danger proved to be from a waterspout towering up to the sky, endangering their vessel should it descend upon them. The method of dispersing these waterspouts was by separating the air by shooting up guns. The young theologian was not content with the German name alone, but gave in this instance and various other cases the Latin for the phenomena seen. A diversion was caused a few days later by the captain pilot, cabin boy, and 3 sailors diving into the ocean and taking a swim, evidently doing some special stunts for the benefit of the passengers. As they swam, on back and side and stomach stood up in the water and even turned somersaults. On the West Sea, the Atlantic, they encountered another great storm, and the cook was swept away from his fireplace and almost washed overboard. They had now been on the ocean more than 2 months, and food was getting scarce. Their last pig, but one, was killed on the 27th of November. For 8 days they had no veal, only bacon and peas. All the flour they had tried to save was spoiled by the rats, and John Helfrich exclaims, "What shall become of us? But God will help." A passenger and a sailor were let down the ship's side for a swim, but did not go far, for they found themselves near a school of man-eating fishes. They had a little skirmish with a French ship, whose captain called upon them to run up their flag and threaten them with his loaded cannon. The captain of the German ship assured his passengers, had the French captain fired, he would have taken his wind from him, grappled with his ship, and settled the matter in a hand-to-hand fight. But the French vessel fortunately went on its way, with nothing worse in the way of hostile demonstrations than threats. Twice ghostly signs were heard and seen. Once at evening, while the sails were being turned, the captain, the pilot, and a German sailor heard on the middle mast which they stood a mournful voice, as though a dying person repeated the words, "Oh yes," 3 times, the last very deeply. On another night, a sailor saw a woman clad in white on the foredeck. December brought more storms. Part of the foremast was broken, and much cordage was torn. The center of the middle mast was cracked, and the ship's cutwater was broken. The food was also growing less and less palatable. A pleasant event a week later was the catching of the first fish on a hook. A dolphin weighing 40 or 50 pounds, the half-starved ship's load, found the food most appetizing. In the stomach of the dolphins was a flying fish. A young whale was also sported about the ship, whose length was about 40 feet. It was gray above and green underneath. Later they ran into a great school of man-eating fishes, as far as I could reach. Christmas Day was unhappily emphasized by increased hunger and thirst. On that day they began to divide the water 2½ cups apiece. Out of this portion each person was expected to give a part for his tea and soup. Added to this was a small glass of wine. Their thirst, increased by the salt and putrid meat, of which they were scarcely allowed enough to keep soul and body together, was almost unendurable. A few peas were left, which they had twice a week. A common variety of food was a soup made of chopped cold meat, biscuit, and water. They were really suffering by this time, and still 10 days from New York, if all went well. Soon after this they hailed a ship from Boston, bound for the South on a whaling expedition, and their captain found he had only missed his bearings by a few miles all through the voyage. Passing another waterspout on January 31st, they prayed devoutly that God might keep it from them. Young Helfrich sets down on this last night of the old year. Tonight is 7 o'clock, 12 o'clock at home, and we wish the friends a happy New Year. During the first week of the New Year, they encountered a fierce storm, and the waves fiercely swept before them. A final disaster was the washing overboard of the last brig. The storm tore the topsail, but by good fortune drove them toward land. The last 3 entries of their long, stormy voyage are briefly full of happiness of successful consummation. January 13th. This morning we saw the shores of New Jersey. At 8 o'clock this evening we saw the light of a tower on the shore. It is lighted every evening to guide the ships. We ran hard by the sandbank at 12 o'clock this night, and to our great joy eased our anchor in the harbor. January 14th. In the morning at 8 o'clock we entered the harbor, and at 2 o'clock we were on the land. The following sentence closes this brief but vivid account of a long and hazardous sea voyage. Thou, God, hast helped us through the storm and tempest. Help us also in that which we were purposed to do. The substance of such a diary sent home to Waldorf in the guise of a letter, furnished conversation over the counters, and in the fields, and by the firesides, for many a day, and a boy, with his heart set on adventure, would thrill with the wonders and dangers of the deep, held back in the dark hours of the night by the awe of storm and hunger, mutiny and man-eating fishes, pressed forward in the daylight by the fierce charm of the sea and the wonders of distant shores. John Jacob Astor fed on every scrap of news regarding the new land which came to him, forgetting while the dream lasted his own inability to take a step toward it. Life's vision was large in those days, even though the daily environment was cramped and strained. John Helfrich, who wrote his journal of a 4 months voyage, said little regarding himself and his companions, being absorbed in the wonders unfolding before him. Waldorf, watching in the account of news of their young townsman, would find it only in the scant references to numerous times when John Gebhard stayed long on the deck in the teeth of coming storm, or clung to the cabin window which commanded a circumscribed outlook upon the raging elements. And so over and over again, evidently to his companions' enjoyment, got a thorough wetting with seawater. The two Johns, who were brothers, seemed to have been of a more cautious temperament, taking their stations near trunks and chests, which furnished high ground in time of deluge. After a long interval, Waldorf learned that John Gebhard had sought out John Henry Livingston on his arrival in America, being glad to grasp a familiar hand, and that their old pastor's son had been appointed to the churches of Whitpain and Worcester, in Pennsylvania. John Helfenstein found a charge at Germantown in the same state, while John Helfrich became the capable and self-sacrificing over-shepherd of a group of churches, including Kurztown, DeLange, Wesenberg, Low Hill, and Heidelberg, in Lehigh County, Pennsylvania. A few years afterward, word reached Waldorf that their young townsman had become the pastor of the German Reformed Church in New York, and John Jacob Astor saw a second link of comradeship in the land of his vision. Some phase of its unreality dropped away with each youth who crossed the ocean and remained near the well-known seaport of New York. Through Benjamin Franklin's kind meditation, letters came and went safely to and from the little town in America across the sea. End of chapter 5.